we've taken the throwout bearing off at the back here, and this is your main input shaft. Now you'll notice this wobbling up and down a bit. That's okay. At the back of this shaft there's a bearing cup built into the back of the shaft, so while it's sitting like this, it's only supported at one end. The bearing inside the flywheel sits on here. Now this has a seal up in the front there. It's at the front of the gearbox, at the back of the bell housing, and way back in there you can just see, if I stay out of the shadow, a couple of bolts. There's 4 bolts and that housing can come out. Now it does get caught up here, as in trying to get it past this throw out housing here. So see this fellow there? So if you have oil leaking into your bell housing and possibly coming out your little telltale hole down the bottom, I've just finished filming now the rear engine seal video on our 1954 TE20, and I'd like to show you how to work out if this seal's leaking, whether this needs attention while you're there. So let's have a look. Let's get a piece of paper. So look, you just need a thin bit of paper. I'm just, doesn't matter what sort of paper. Now what we're looking to do is slide the paper between the shaft, lift the shaft up a bit, because oil will sit at the bottom, the shaft and that input housing there. And lift him up, slide him in and out a couple of times, bring him out, and if that's got oil in it, that front seal's leaking. Ours isn't. Look at that, nothing. Sometimes, now I can't remember on this, if there's a little telltale hole along the way. Look, it doesn't feel like it. But look, bugger it, we're in here, we'll pull it out anyway. If we're doing tractor videos, we might as well do the bloody lot, eh? So, look, but on yours, slide a bit of paper up, and look, that goes for any tractor. If you're not sure where the oil's coming from, slide a bit of paper up. If that comes out oily, you know exactly where that leak is coming from. So what we'll do now, we'll just work towards getting to that front seal. We'll just video doing the front seal. That's no big deal, no biggie. And we might as well do it while we're here. This old tractor, she won't look real flash, but she'll be mechanically just bloody beautiful. Okay, we'll get the camera back to where we think we need it and we'll go from there. Okay, to proceed from here, I'll get my wires up out of the way so they're not in the picture so much. And this is our clutch pedal. Now we had a look at that before, and if I pick the camera up as I do this, you'll see that moving there. Now what we need to do here is get an 11/16 spanner, hop onto the bolt here and loosen this off, because once we put a new clutch we need to reset the whole pedal anyway. And when we set the free travel later, we can hold this shaft and we can move the pedal around to wherever we need our backlash. So that can come off. There's a tiny little thrust washer there. So look, we might just leave it there. We'll bring you around to the front once more. And now we've taken that off, this shaft, oh, that's tight, that's too tight, shouldn't be that tight. This shaft can turn right around. And this shaft, there should be no drag on that at all, but I'm actually working, turning that, so look, that's unacceptable really. So what we do, we turn the shaft right round as far as we can go with the fork at the back. Then on the top here we have 2 little split pins. I'll try and bring the light around a little bit further. Okay, we've taken the pedal off. Now this here, that should just slop around like a bloody, yeah, well, what can I say? That should be easy to turn, but look, that's quite difficult to turn. So we need to deal with that while we're here. Now on the top, you have we have a flat blade screwdriver slot on the bolts there, and then on the top we have a 7/16 nut that a 7/16 spanner goes on with a split pin through it holding that on. So we need to take this shaft out to release the main housing. So we'll just we'll give ourselves enough to grab that split pin. It's gone. Maybe grab this next one, and it's there too. Good work, Lance. Okay, where's my little shifter when I need one? God, I miss me shifter. But will this fella fit on? So we need to undo the nuts off here, and oh no, this is okay. I've had them very tight, but this is a loose one. So we can undo the castellated nuts. Put your finger under the shaft and just hold the shaft from the bolt, the head of the bolt. Push it up and that'll stop it from turning. And then if we put the spanner on the outside and turn that shaft like that, you can see that bolt just about falling out. We need to get those bolts out. And there's our throw out fork. So what we're doing now, we'll just try and withdraw that out this side, out the clutch pedal side. And we'll grease these bushes up and all that while it's out. I'm not that keen on hitting it at the other end there because you can burr it, but it's quite firm now, it's free. There's a bush in the housing there, and you can still see the marks in the bush, the little lubrication marks, but there's no lubrication there. So there's our shaft. You can see a little bit of rust at the back there. We'll just polish that up on the wire buff, and we see dried grease in that here. We'll polish that up as well, and look, that should be a good thing. So now, if I bring the light up, you can see those 4 bolts up the back there. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like a 9/16 fits them. So we'll try and get in there. Okay, let's go in there with a 9/16 socket and a big extension. And we'll just loosen those bolts off. Can't even see that back one, you blokes are in the road. Okay, we'll run them out by finger. I'm just thinking that light might be better from the other side. I don't know, yeah, you can see in there. I'll just point something out. On the, if you look right up the back there, that yellow stuff, it looks like bear glue. That'll be a something to stop galvanic corrosion as well, I believe. I think you can see it there. But now this should come off. So it should slowly just rattle forward for me. And there we go. Okay, that hole I couldn't feel before for the drain is there. So there's not much oil around the back there. But yeah, that's where it would come out at the back. And there's a drain hole at the front here of the bell housing, straight down there, and there's one right at the back in the bulge. So yeah, if it's coming out the back one, it's probably this. So there you go. That's the shaft. Now what you look at here is that bearing there. Now that bearing, they're getting to the AG's tractors where that bearing has quite a few marks on it, but look, ours is okay. Might be a little mark or two. Certainly nothing we're worrying about. The oil's a little bit milky, but it's clean. We can slide this shaft out, and we can also use that to line up our clutch. And the front gearbox seal is just here. So I think I have a gasket there to replace it, and we'll put a new seal in, and we'll get this ready to go back in. Okay, we've got the front housing, the throw-out support housing and the front main shaft bearing support housing in the vise here, and we've got to pull this seal out. Now, if you can see, I don't know if you can see down the side there, but this seal, the leather, has been kinked over at some stage. Look, maybe from assembly back ages ago, but we don't know. So look, what we'll do, we'll put that in the vise there. I'll try and get it in the vise where you can see up the spout. There you go. God, the things I do for you. Okay, then I'm just using a bar with a little knock around bar. Yeah. And we'll bring that in behind the seal and see how hard it is to bump out. Hey, look at that. Nothing to it. I'll just pick this seal up. Now, you can see the lip there. So that's been like that for bloody ages. I don't know if I can get it right in so you can see it. But yeah, you can see that bit of leather sticking out around there. So, we clean this out in here. Try and give them a nice clean surface to put the new seal in. Now, we've got some gaskets sitting around here. So, what I like to do with the gaskets, a lot of gaskets anyway, is I have a right angle die grinder, and I like to use these little row lock buffing pads. This is just a blue one, this is just what's in it. So when we get going, But look, that just takes the gasket off, cleans it up nicely, gives us a nice new surface to put it on. Then after we've taken the gasket off here, we have to take the housing away, give it a wash, make sure there's no swarth, nothing around, clean up in here. We have a seal, a Sparex seal to go in, but I'll shut down for a sec, I'll go and take this away, get rid of the gasket, clean him all up, and we'll come back. Okay, look how nice that housing is. Woohoo! Got to be happy with that. So I've cleaned the housing, I've cleaned in there. I've run where the throwout bearing goes, just on the wire brush on the side of the grinder, just to clean any old grease and muck and that off. So we'll sit the housing in the vise here, and pardon me, I've got a disc, a 51mm disc, and the 51mm disc seems to sit nicely on that seal, so that'll do us. So I often just put a tad of oil, I'll just wipe this up, it's a bit dusty I believe. Just a smear of oil around the seal, and it might just help it not pick up on the edge there, something like that. So when you put the seal in, you see the spring here. You can see the spring side. The spring goes towards the oil. This side doesn't. So the oil is this side on the bearing side. So we'll put our 51mm disc there. Now, the thing is here, is these seals can go in crooked easy as pie. So we're just trying to start off gently. Okay, that's going in well. It feels good. And keep checking it. Yep, that looks okay. Whoops, sorry camera. So it feels like it's in pretty well. Now just so I can get a decent tap on it without hitting the camera, I'm going to just pop him in there and come straight up and down just to you can feel that. You can feel it's gone home. And that's what the end result is. Now, pardon me, I always like to put a little bit of grease on every seal. It just helps things go through. Once again, this is just a tube of grease I've had hanging around, so don't get too excited about what type, what colour, any of that. But it is a pretty orange, isn't it? So there we go, a bit on the bearing surface, that's fine. Okay. Now, originally this housing had a gasket around it, as you know, I took it off. And the shaft, when it sat on the bearing, it had a lot of slop around. So I'm going to actually sit this back on and try it without a gasket. Just tightening the bearings up after 70 years without using a gasket will be fine. Now, as for the galvanic corrosion issue, with a little bit of Loctite 515 there, that will protect the two metals from each other. And these bolts that hold it onto the front of the gearbox, they actually go through into the gearbox. So it would be possible for the oil to leak up through the bolts, you know, through the threads, if they weren't sealed. So I've just got to check a little bit of. Oh no, that's okay. So getting ready to go up in there, we have the main shaft, and this is your main gearbox shaft. So you'll notice on this, You see that black mark there where the seal's been running and sitting? Well, what we need to do is just polish that up a little bit. So once I do this vise up, I'll get you back in frame. So now we've shifted the camera, you can see this little dark mark I was speaking of. So look, all I want to do there, I've got a bit of, there's a little bit of 280, but it's worn out 280. That will be fine. So I'm just going to roll it up. Put a little WD spray or something like that on it, bit of possum pea. And we're just going to give that shaft a little polish where the new seal's going to run. And a couple of reasons. One, to get rid of the stain, but it actually gives us a good look there to make sure the seal surface is okay. I think that's fine. I'll turn him around a bit more. And once more. I'll give that all a wipe. That seal surface is looking good to me. I'll just give this a bit of a wash. I don't know that any muck didn't go into there. So I've got a little pot over here, just a quick rinse with a little bit of petrol and a blow dry. And that's what we're left with, a nice clean shaft. So it looks good. So we need to turn this around and have a quick look here. I think this end is 1 3/8 spline. Just have a look here, make sure that where the pilot bearing goes, spigot bearing goes is good. Make sure there's no burrs or the spline isn't greatly worn here. If you think it may be, you can just run a file down. Look, they're fairly hard splines. I'll also, at this stage, hang tight. Okay, so at this stage, where this spline is here, you notice that's a fairly sharp front corner there. So as we go into the seal, we know the old seal was buggered up a bit, so how about we just run some masking tape over the spline here, push him down over the corner and run the length of the spline. Now, what we have to be careful of here is with the bearing sitting there, we don't take this up that far that we can't get it back out again. You know, we've got too much tape on. So probably the smart thing to do here would have been to start here and go there, so at least you could unwind it, but we'll get it off. So once we've done that and we've put the tape on, oh, the grease is sticky, isn't it? We'll put a bit of lube over it, just so the tape doesn't pick up in the seal. Wipe my hands. We'll undo this. We'll zoom back out a bit if we can. And where this goes into the housing there, just sort of work him in now. See, you can see there now that seal's not turned over. It hasn't been turned. So that can go right in there. And here's our the end of our shaft here. So what I'd like to do now is just hold this in the vise. Now you can see what I mean about taking the tape up too far. So if there's a little bit of tape left there after we finished here, we have to deal with it. So I'll come around. I'll take my tape back out again. There we are. There's the end of the tape. That can drop into the bin. So we know we have no tape left there. Missed the bin. It's so far away, you know, 2 feet. So there, that's that shaft done. Now, when we get to putting the clutch together in a while, we also like to have a little bit of lube on this shaft here, so we may as well put a little bit of that on now. Don't overdo it, you just need a little bit of... This grease is good for the video because of the colour, but just a little bit of grease down the spline so that when you start it and run it, you have a little bit of grease here so it goes into the pilot bearing easy. The clutch plate will run up and down here nicely. So here's our clutch plate, so it can go up and down the spline easily. But you don't want that much there that when you start the tractor, there's that much air that it spins out and gets on the plate here. You're just defeating the purpose altogether. So just a little bit. Also now is the time, or before you try putting the tractor together, is the time to check that the clutch plate fits. There's no use trying to put the tractor together and push and push and push and the splines don't line up. So there's not much of a lead in on this plate, but anyway, that's another story. Okay, that's that front shaft done. We'll move over now and we'll take this over to the gearbox and we'll have a look at what we need to do to put that back. Okay, I've hopped in through here, I've cleaned all this gasket out. All the gaskets, I've tidied that up. I've washed the bell housing here out and I've got all my screws sitting with a bit of Loctite 515 on to stop the galvanic corrosion. Now, you've just seen me putting all this together. Now, originally it had a gasket here. I've chosen not to put the gasket in. I'm using Loctite 515. Now, the gasket was a very thin paper one and the shaft did wobble around a lot, so we knew that there wasn't any preload on it. The gasket also stopped galvanic corrosion, so will Loctite 515. So I'm just going to slide that fella in. Try and get him started in the housing there. Now, the holes that go with these bolts, the holes go right through into the gearbox. So that's why we have sealer on the bolts. Now we've got to jiggle this around a bit. There we go. That's a start. We'll start down the bottom here if I can get one going. Yep, it's another starter. Another. Yep, that one should get going okay, I believe. I'll just have a feel. Yep, that's okay. And this other one way down over here. So I'll come back on my stool and get my snap-on ratchet. You notice I don't do things up with the air gun. you have no feel. So we'll just rattle this up with the ratchet. Now, just nice and gentle. Just wait till you can feel it. Then give this bearing a turn. And what we're looking to do by doing that is just make sure there's no rollers hanging around where you don't want them. Just go nice and even from one side to the other. Give him another turn. And now we'll just nip that up. You can hear the shed creaking. We've had a, it's not a bad day, but we have cloud coming over, and in the big old tin shed here, as the sun comes out, it expands, and the sun goes out and the clouds come over, it contracts, and it makes us have a noisy shed. But I've changed microphones and that to try and block a lot of that out, but I still can see a little bit of it on the monitor there coming in, so there may be a bit there. Hopefully it's not too bad. I'll have a listen back. If it's a bit crook, well, we'll just pull up here and we'll have to let it wait till another day. So there we go. We'll just test our bolts are all done up with sealer on them. So, well, two reasons I suppose. One to stop the corrosion and one to stop the oil. So this here, see, we still have movement, so we know that bearing's not too tight, and it turns nicely in there. So look, that's a good thing. Now, while we're in the bell housing here, you may remember the clutch shaft was tight to get in, so I'll find my beautiful orange grease. And we'll put a little bit in the bush over here. This stuff will hang around for ages, and I'll put a little bit in the bush on this side here. Wipe it off my finger. And this shaft, you can see I've polished that with a little bit of emery tape. Same on this side. So as we come in, I'll just do a bit of a test fit first before I put the throw out fork on. Look, that's lovely. I can turn that with my fingers easily. So we're happy with that. Now, on this piece here that rubs on the throw out bearing carrier, we've got to find a spot for him back in here. Now, I don't believe you can have this upside down, like it can be 180 about. To my knowledge, you can't get that wrong. But what we need to do at this stage is put the screws in, line the holes up, hold your mouth right. Where's the holes? There we go, just there. Get rid of some of that. Don't need all that. I lost me a bit of rag. Stop looking, I got it. So we'll put this bolt in next to it. These are in good nick, so we're going to use them again. And we should be able to do these nuts up. It's a noisy day in the shed today. Where are we? Come on. There we go. See if I can get this other fella started. Bugger. I should have had a little split pin organised for this, shouldn't I? It's bloody hard to get good help. Okay, I'll go and find a spanner and grab a split pin. Okay, back again. Now we've got a screwdriver there. a 7/16 spanner here. That's the go. Now same for here. Whoop. Now I need to find my glasses once more and find where those little split pins are, because I can't see a bloody thing. I'll try and turn the we're nearly there. That one just has to turn a little more. Oh, come on. I'm just going to have to go and find my glasses. Okay, I've got the screws in and the split pin sitting up here. Now, I like to put a little bit of grease where the throwout slides back and forth, and also on these fellas, and then just run a bit of grease around there so and there's a little reservoir for a bit of grease inside there, so we'll pop a little bit of extra there. And that should have this good for many years. So we can slide the throwout on. There we go. Look at that. Then we can adjust this so it sits there. I'll give us a little bit of a wipe of the grease, the excess there. Get rid of that. Give that a clean, probably no real need. Now I've got my MIG welding pliers again, so I like to put the, I'm not sure which way is the proper way for these, but I put the spring part at the back where nothing can rub on it, and put the long piece at the front where it's got fingers to deal with and all that. So I've never really bothered reading where it went. So this might be completely wrong, but it's what I do. Okay, so what I can do now is put an 11/16 spanner on the outside of that shaft, and that should bounce back freely. And you can feel it snapping back, so you know we've got a good feel there. So the pedal can probably go back on, but not be adjusted until we get the rest on. So I won't worry about the clutch pedal until we probably get it back together. There's no real need in adjusting that or buggering around with that. But look, that feels good. That should give us a nice, well, a nice feel to the clutch pedal. And make sure there's a little bit of grease there. We'll pop our spanners out of there. Make sure there's no oil, grease, anything like that. I've made sure, I've gone around this housing with a scraper and made sure that's nice and clean. Now, as you saw originally, this had a paper gasket around it, and we spoke about the galvanic corrosion. Now, pardon me, I often use Loctite instead, yeah, your Loctite 515. Not a silicon-based one, but the one that looks like strawberry jam. In Australia, it's a Bearco R51, and that gives you a good, it gives you a good coverage. It'll cover irregularities in gaskets or in surfaces up to 20 thou, so it'll stop our galvanic corrosion problem. And also, because it goes onto the bolts here a bit, you can just put a tad on each of your bolts, and when you do your bolts up, you're okay. But it's only bolts that come back in this housing here that are going to have trouble with galvanic corrosion. But look, a little bit of Loctite 515 on them, it does the same as a Duralac. So I've made my mind up whether I'm going to cut a gasket for that. I'm thinking not. I just can't see the sense in going to all the trouble to do that. I think once we get it all back together and a little bit of 515 around and back together, that's okay. Now 515, you can put that there any time and it will not go off until you take the air away. So, okay, so that's all we need to do in the back end now. Yeah, not much more we can do there until I get the ring gear and we can start dealing with the clutch.